So this is a crash course on the tax credits and rebates for households in the Inflation Reduction Act. For those that don't know, I'm Tim Fremouw, the co-chair of the Central Minnesota chapter of the Climate Reality Project. Our main goal tonight is to prepare members who will be staffing the exhibit at the upcoming state fair. Nonetheless, even if you aren't staffing the fair, I think it'll be helpful so you can see how you could save money moving to cleaner energy sources, reducing emissions, improving comfort, protecting health, and saving money. So let's go on. Disclaimer, note that this presentation does not constitute professional tax advice, nor should it be used as the only source of information when making decisions. You've been warned. Okay, got that. In a moment, I'm going to dive deep into the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's important to know that it covers a lot more than climate and clean energy. The IRA included a huge healthcare component involving $100 billion to shore up healthcare programs and about $280 billion for prescription drug pricing reform. But most of those reforms don't go into effect until 2025 or 2026. So you're not seeing them yet. It also includes greater taxation on the extremely wealthy, raising an estimated $400 billion, which is the original estimated cost of the whole program. And of course, it invests in clean energy. The climate provisions in the IRA were estimated to cost about $40 billion a year over 10 years for a total of $400 billion. So as a result of that, it's actually the largest climate action law ever, anywhere in the world, and it seeks to leverage private capital to greatly amplify its effect. The original estimates that it would cost $392 billion, but they did not cap the tax credits. And people are using them so heavily that it looks like it may exceed $1 trillion over a 10-year period. So I think that's a good thing. So let's look at some of those provisions. This is from a conference of 100 mayors, an organization. Let's say that there's $400 billion in climate provisions. About half of those focus on increasing the supply of clean, renewable energy. And if you look at the chart, the two largest other chunks are manufacturing and housing. Okay, so that's where the money's going. Next slide. Note that most of the $400 billion is in the form of tax credits. In fact, businesses are projected to receive more than half of them. Notice the slice in light blue, individual tax credits, $43 billion. That's what they estimated for all the tax credits we're going to be talking about at the fair. So that's about $4 billion a year for 10 years. However, just last week, the IRS reported that individuals last year already claimed $8 billion, twice what they thought. So we're doing well. And as it's not capped, we should do all we can to let visitors, friends, neighbors know that now is a great time to invest in home improvements, etc. Okay, so we got that. Last, before we turn our attention to the credits and rebates for households, another major piece of legislation was passed a year before the IRA. You probably heard of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's also called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. There was a number of provisions in it related to climate, totaling $171 billion. And that's half of what's in the IRA. It included funding for EV charging infrastructure, which granted has been a real challenge. It's been difficult to roll out. And $65 billion for grid modernization, etc. Okay. Okay, our table. So this is a mock-up of our table at the state fair. So there's our huge banner. That's to help you tell where to go. There are 7 items on the table. There's a tax credit poster, electric vehicle incentive poster, upcoming rebates poster, and we'll have a small version of Fresh Energy's poster. You've probably seen that before, that one that you unfold. I guess Fresh Energy has provided a very large one, which last I heard is going to be outside. So I took an iron and I tried to iron out the crinkles, and I taped it to a piece of styrofoam, and that'll be on our table if it doesn't blow away. We'll see what happens. Okay. We'll also have our small business cards that you give to visitors. And we'll have an area median income chart, which can be used to determine if you qualify for the rebates. And we'll also have a brown leather binder, which includes a quick start guide. I'll be bringing it during my shift this Thursday. So that'll be on the table, so you can use it for reference. Okay, next slide. Next to the table, there'll be a computer. It's not there yet, but it better be, because I have to configure it yet. There'll be a sheet in that brown leather binder telling how to fix it if someone messes it up. So be aware of that. Our webpage contains a wealth of information on the IRA. Copies of all the posters on the table, except for Fresh Energy, and links to some of the best resources that we have found, including Rewiring America and Minnesota Search. So I'm going to come back to this. The incentives for households take two forms that we're going to cover: the federal tax credits and the rebates. And those rebates vary from state to state. Wisconsin and New York have already started rolling theirs out. Some states may not roll them out for a couple of years. So we could be out of money, and the state next to us could still be giving their citizens money because they haven't run out yet. That's going on. Let's start with the tax credits. If you were at the Mayflower training, you saw this slide, but I'll go through it quickly. The credits are available every year through 2032. It's a 10-year program. The basic rule is that 30% of the cost of the listed items can be taken as a federal tax credit. But there are some limits. Now, there are 3 buckets. I've color-coded them. For the ones in yellow, your tax credit is actually 30% of what you paid. It applies to new and existing homes. As you can see, it applies to solar panels, battery storage, wind turbines, ground source heat pumps. But if your tax credit is greater than the tax you owe, for this category only, you could roll it over to another year. Now, in contrast, the items in green and blue are more restrictive. Both limit the amount you can claim each year. We'll go through that more in a bit. They are also limited to existing homes, not new homes. And the credit cannot be carried over. This includes air source heat pumps, not ground ones, heat pump water heaters, windows, doors, electric panels, and even a home energy audit. In addition, you can see at the bottom there are incentives of up to $7,500 for a qualifying electric vehicle. Now, as I mentioned at the training, there's a lot of fine print, but you don't need to remember all the details. We got posters all over the place. Just look at those. So we got that going on. Now let's zoom in on the big tax credit poster that's going to be at the table. This is the top portion, the yellow part. Again, we see that for the items. I'm repeating this so it sinks in, you memorize it. We'll see if it works. For the items in yellow, your tax credit is simply 30% of what you paid. Remember that the credits in this section can be claimed for new or existing homes, and they could roll over the excess credit. There's also some fine print in the poster, which you can look up as needed. For example, the battery storage must be at least 3 kilowatt hours of capacity. By the way, it doesn't have to be connected to solar. They changed it now. It could just be a power backup in case of emergency. They changed the rules. The heat pumps listed on this page, they get the full 30% credit with no cap, are ground source or water source heat pumps. Now, those are that have heat exchangers that are buried in the ground or in the water. Air source heat pumps are listed in the next section, and they do have a cap. Okay. The next section of the poster. To claim any of the tax credits, first you make your upgrade, then you submit IRS form number 5695 when you file your federal taxes. And that form has all kinds of instructions that'll clarify what does or does not qualify. So you might want to read those instructions if you have any doubt, so you buy the right thing. As noted earlier, the items in green and blue are more restrictive. They're limited to existing homes, and you cannot apply any excess credit to future tax years. Now, a couple of tips. Say you expect to have excess tax credits. You might, and you had a retirement account, you could consider a Roth conversion. That way you don't lose the money, and you know, it's a good way of doing it. Note that for the items in green here, you cannot claim more than $2,000 in a year. So if you're planning to get both the heat pump water heater and an air source heat pump, you might want to consider purchasing them in different years. So there's a lot of planning involved in this. You got to think it through. What makes the most sense based on your income and what you need. Here's the final section of the tax credits, the bottom section. The items in blue have the same limitations as those in green, but the combined maximum tax credit for all these in 1 year is $1,200. For the top 3 items, insulation, windows, and doors, you cannot include labor. You can for the other items. Also note that many of the items have individual caps, like windows. You cannot exceed more than $600 per year. But all these tax credits are per year. So $1,200 per year total for the blue ones. So if you want to replace several windows, you might want to consider spreading it out over several years. Mary, I noticed your hand up. I'll let you jump in there, but it won't be long until I go to the break. Mary, go ahead. Oh, I think she opted out. Okay, go.
No, sorry, sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
lost my unmute. I did something similar for my neighborhood, and one thing for people to be aware of is that if people are already getting like a rebate from Excel or Centerpoint, the all of the IRA stuff is the remaining cost. So if I get a heat pump and I get like $600 from Excel, I can't remember what the amount is, and say it was $5,000. And so I still owe 4,400, then I get 30% of that 4,400.
Yeah, Mary, just so you know, I'm going to be getting to that, and I'm going to be giving you some examples.
Sorry, I did
That's
not,
okay.
sorry.
Okay, that's
I'll
fine, fine. But that's important. So the tax credit is on the balance after rebate, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. In this blue chart, the middle group, the central AC, water heaters, heating equipment is really interesting. You can actually get tax credits for purchasing efficient versions of fossil fuel appliances. That group is fossil fuel, but hopefully you'll opt for the heat pump versions on the previous page instead, okay? The last 2 items, electric panel upgrade, it must have a capacity of 200 amps or more. And note that you can get a 30% off the cost of a home energy audit, which I encourage you to do. That 30% can be up to $150, but I think it won't be anywhere near that if you go through CEE. Going on. So here was your chance to ask the question. So we got that. So if you have any questions, just raise your virtual hand. I'll give you a minute here. While you're doing that, I'm going to change a couple settings. Okay, I'll get to you in a second, Brian. I'm going to change my pointer to a laser pointer, and then I'm going to see all the slides. So you can see where we're at. And if you want to point to a certain slide, I could jump to it. Brian, what you up to?
Oh, just are the items in the $2,000 a year limit and the items in the $1,200 a year limit stackable? So in other words, could you get up to 3,200? Okay.
Yes, you get up to the full 1,200 in the one category and the full 2,000 in the other category, and you can do it year after year after year, but they have to be for different items.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Hand down and on to Arnie. You're muted. Yeah, you know.
Try to unmute it there. I was told, in addition, I had I wanted to re-roof my garage before putting in the solar panels. I was told that I could get 30% off or 30% credit for the shingling as well. I don't know if that's.
They've been rather specific on that. If it's built into the shingles, like the solar ones that Tesla sells, yes. But if you're just putting solar on top of a standard roof, no. You only get the solar part covered. So,
oh, well, then
yeah,
I was
read that like 20 different places. So
then I was misinformed by the
yeah,
installer.
you got to watch those people. That maybe that's how they're getting the $8 billion. I don't know. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Sure. Okay, any more? Arnie, you have a second question? Your hand's still up. Okay, so I'm gonna Jump to the next one. Okay, let's move on to rebates. There are huge rebates for switching to electric appliances. Now, this is a huge opportunity. You know, if you're still using natural gas to heat your water, dry your clothes, cook your food, heat your home, you can save a lot of money, lower emissions, and make your home healthier and more comfortable. Now, these are substantial amounts. $8,000 off an air source heat pump, $4,000 off an electric panel, $1,750 for a heat pump, $1,600 for weatherization. By the way, weatherization cannot include labor either. That's why I have it highlighted in yellow there. Up to $840 off the electric stove and up to $840 off a heat pump clothes dryer. But again, the poster will be there and you can refer to it for details. Now, here's some important things to note. The rebates are not yet available. It's really been frustrating. Originally, we were told it'd be 2023 or 2024, but it turns out the federal government spent most of 2023 just trying to figure out how to implement these laws, which were just, they had goals, not how to do it. And now the states are trying to figure out how to implement their programs. As I mentioned, New York and Wisconsin have theirs started, but we're hoping to get ours out by the spring of 2025. Okay.
I think at
Also
this
note-
point, there was about 1 year of federal delay, and now there's been 1 year of state delay, and that number is now increasing.
Yeah,
So state
precisely.
delay is going to wind up being greater than the federal in the
Yeah.
end for Minnesota.
And I think a good part of it is that we don't appreciate the amount of work it takes to get this stuff done. Like Commerce had great difficulty finding anyone to hire to even work on it. You know, so there's all kinds of challenges. So,
Yep.
Okay. Another important point: the rebate funding. Patty, I'm going to wait until there'll be another break in a little bit. I want to keep on going. So if you could hold your question. The rebate funding is very limited. Minnesota was allocated or will be allocated $75 million for this rebate program. With over 2 million households in Minnesota, I don't think those rebates are going to last very long. So okay, maybe we'll get 5,000 people get them, but we'll see what happens. I did hear that they're thinking of lowering the rebate amounts in Minnesota so they can cover more people, but we'll see. But the key point is don't miss out. You know, keep informed, determine what you want to do first, and note that the Department of Commerce website posts the current status. Once they figure something out, they announce it. Most of them right now say something like, we do not yet have a date for the raw, that sort of thing. And it's not yet certain, but it looks like you're going to have to go online to apply for the rebate. I don't know if it's going to be like the e-bike program or something else, but they're still working on the details. I know that Brian is on part of the group of people that volunteered to have input. So if you have any suggestions, talk to Brian, right? Yeah, okay. There you go. Note that these are point of sale rebates. They reduce the price that you pay at the time of purchase. Now, how large is your rebate going to be? It depends on whether you're classified as low or moderate income compared to others in your county. These figures vary by county. The factors that determine your level are your household income, everyone in your household, your county's median income, and the number of persons in your household. At the state fair in our table, there's an AMI chart in a flip book. The chart could also be accessed via the computer. Now, this is just a sample page. It lists the median household income for each county in Minnesota. For each county, there are 2 rows of figures, one for 80% and the other for 150% of the area median income. If the household income is less than 80%, the household is considered low income. If it's between 80 and 150%, it's considered moderate income. Now, I have a question for you. Look at that chart. You can raise your virtual hand if you have the answers to use first. Based on that chart, in Hennepin County, that's the one at the bottom I've highlighted, what's the most that a single person can earn and still be considered moderate income? Anyone? Hopefully it's big enough for you to see. So if you're a single person, Anna, what's the answer?
$130,500.
Yep, $130,450 per year. And of course, if they don't come out till next year, we'll have a 2025 AMI table and it might be higher. We'll see what happens. So you can see I think a lot of Minnesotans are going to qualify. Now, one more question. Someone other than Anna gets to answer this one. What is the most that a couple living in Hennepin County could earn and still be considered low income? So anyone have that answer? Two people in Hennepin County, what's the most they could earn and still be qualified as low income? Patty, what's your answer?
$78,249.
That's right. So you even caught that it couldn't quite be 80%, although it's possible the state might make it equal to 80%. We're not sure what they're going to do. Thank you. Now, if your income is greater than 150% of AMI, you do not qualify for these appliance rebates. Now, there's something else called efficiency rebates that are based on how much you reduce your energy use, but the details aren't out yet, and higher income might qualify for those. We just don't know yet. Okay, well, next let's take a look at how a family's income classification impacts the size of the rebate. Low-income households are eligible for rebates covering the full cost of the listed items up to the maximum rebate permitted by the state. Moderate incomes are eligible for rebates covering only 50% of the cost up to the maximum rebate permitted by the state. Now, in reality, if you purchase something that's very expensive, both of them would be very similar. But for other items, that's not the case. Here's an example. Say a low-income household bought a $1,000 induction stove, Energy Star it would have to be, and they managed to snag a rebate. Well, the rebate currently stands at $840, so they'd get a stove for only $160. Now, another chance to raise your virtual hand. How much would a $1,000 electric stove cost a moderate income household after rebate? Anyone? Pat, are you still up there or is someone else?
I think she didn't lower her hand.
I just left mine up, sorry. Someone else.
Brian, you want to tackle it? What would be your rebate if you were moderate income for a $1,000 electric stove?
$500, but only if you're replacing a gas stove. It doesn't count if you're replacing an existing electric stove.
Okay, now is that from your meeting? You're sure? Because the last thing I heard from the federal thing, they're going to have 3 situations that if it's the first time you got one, you might qualify too. But I guess we'll see. Yeah,
I thought I read that somewhere, but
yeah. I don't know, but definitely if you're replacing a gas one, you're okay.
Yeah. But unfortunately, if you're replacing a gas one, you probably also have to do an electrical upgrade or at least put in a circuit.
And that's why you have to plan ahead. So maybe you're going to an electric car, maybe you want to upgrade your electric circuit first, or if you're going to do a heat pump, maybe you want to insulate your house first and upgrade your electric, depending. Okay. Now let's try something harder. Next slide. So here's the question. Well, first, I should mention this. Last year, I found that a very easy way to get a visitor enthused about the incentives is to first find out what they're interested in and then demonstrate how much they could save. Okay, so this time, let's assume that a family is purchasing a $10,000 air source heat pump. I already got a quote. That's what mine would cost, okay? And that the state sticks with the maximum rebate of $8,000. And that the family manages to get one of those rebates. I have 2 questions. Let's go with the first one. How much would the heat pump cost a low-income household? So again, we're looking for volunteers to raise their hand. So a $10,000 air source heat pump, $8,000 rebate, how much would it cost a low-income household? Arnie, you're up.
Oh, Patty can take this if she wants, but I think they only pay $2,000.
Okay, that's correct. So 10,000 minus 8,000, 2,000, but would they qualify for anything else?
I don't know. Patty?
Does anyone remember seeing the heat pumps on the tax credit page?
Oh, yeah.
So 30% up to 2,000.
Right. Yep.
So
So we're
first they get,
talking the stuff that exists already, not the stuff that's proposed like we were before.
$1,400. Well,
yeah, the price would be down to $14,000. And again, all we're assuming
1,400.
here is that the rebate is what the federal government recommended, which is 8,000. The state could change that going lower, but we don't know yet. But there's more than that. Utilities like Excel offer heat pump rebates of around $1,000 to $2,000, $1,000 to $2,000. Further, the state of Minnesota has funds to cover any remaining cost up to $4,000 while funds last. So there's even some local rebates. Some cities have them. So it's quite possible this heat pump could be free. Okay, now let's go the same thing again, same question, but for a moderate income. How much, assuming they get the rebates stay at this current levels, how much would it cost a moderate income household to get a $10,000 air source heat pump? So let anyone jump in there and take a stab at it.
So the rebate, they'd get $4,000.
Oh, no, half of 10,000, right?
Right. So we're down to 6.
No, half of 10,000 is 5,000. So 10,000 minus 5,000 is 5,000. So we're down to 5,000.
But then there's 30% off of that.
Right. So 30% of 5,000 is
1,500.
yeah, 1,500. So 5,000 minus 1,500 is
3,500.
35. So we're down to 3,500. And again, with all the other rebates, it potentially could be free too. But again, the key is landing one of those rebates, and we don't know how they're going to do it yet. And of course, if you have a larger home, like 7 bedrooms, you might need a larger heat pump than that. You might have to go with 20,000 or 30,000. So I'm lucky I have a small home. 10,000 will do it. So we got that. Okay. No, as to which ones would qualify for both rebates and tax credits, air source heat pumps qualify for both, electric panels for both, heat pump water heaters for both, and weatherization qualifies for both. Okay, and on the charts, there's little symbols indicating that, so little asterisks and pound symbols, so you can tell that. Okay, got that. Now, there's several ways to help visitors figure out how much they could save. Now, one way is to calculate it like we just did. The easiest, but not necessarily the best way, is to go to the Rewiring America website and use their IRA calculator. So that's a page here. I got the link at the top. It's also a link that's on our web page. And once you're there, you just fill in the information, you click on View Results. Note that there's a reset button up here that you can click that will erase all this information after they're done so that the next person doesn't see their income. You can explain that to them if they don't, when they want to look at what their income is. Okay, so next slide. So after you click on View Results, a drop-down menu will appear. Here it says Heating and Ventilation. It shows whatever you did last. You click that little arrow there, and it shows all the options that you qualify for based on your income. So next slide. Come on, there we go. It then displays the tax credits and rebates that you could be eligible for. So that's kind of handy, it's a quick way of doing it. But I do want to caution you, the site is not perfect. As Mary pointed out, like for the air source heat pump, it doesn't mention that the tax credit is 30% of the remaining cost after the rebate. So be aware of that. Also for the rebates, it only lists the maximum permitted IRA rebate. It doesn't list for low income or middle income. But that's understandable because Minnesota hasn't finalized its rebates. Almost none of the states have. But as we know that our state, they told me they do, as our state does plan to use the low income and moderate income rules, you could use our AMI chart to produce a more accurate estimate. You don't have to, but you can if you want. So you got that going. If they're mathematically apt, go ahead, help them out. You can also find similar information on the energy.gov website. There's a link on our webpage, and it's pretty much very similar to the Rewiring America website. One thing I like about the energy.gov site is that it shows the status of the rebate rollout in every state. So there you can see that New York and Wisconsin have at least rolled out part of their program. Minnesota's submitted its application, although I think they've only submitted it for funding for the appliance rebate. I don't think they've submitted it for anything else, and they haven't submitted a final thing. And look at all the states that are still working on submitting an application. So I got that going. So I got that, and I have on the side there. By the way, all these slides, they are in the link that Laura Sina just sent out to all of us, so you could go into these slides. You can find that link if you want to look it up. It's also on our website and so forth. Okay, got that. Another way to discover how much they can save, look at the fresh energy poster. Now that's a great poster. It groups things. Here's the hot water thing. Here's the solar thing. Here's the electric vehicle thing. So all I have to do is look up a project, and everything will be there. But it has a problem too. The poster is out of date. For example, it states that the e-bike state rebate has not yet launched. It did launch, and within 20 minutes, all the funds for this year were exhausted. There'll be the second round and last round will be, unless they extend it, will be next year. They haven't announced when, but another $2 million. Again, watch the Department of Commerce website for information as to when it's available. It may be months, maybe a year. It also refers to state rebates on electric vehicles. That program already launched, and all of those funds have been allocated. So just be aware of that. Don't tell people that the state is going to give them an extra $2,500. Also, the poster doesn't mention that there's a difference between low and moderate income household rebate amounts. So just be aware of that. Again, any of these are good, and only having the EV stuff off is not too bad. So that's kind of cool. But after you've helped a few visitors, I think you're going to be able to do a lot of this from memory. How many times do you need to calculate a heat pump? You get it in there. You could refer to our tax credits and poster and our rebates poster, as well as the area median income chart the first few times. One final option, our webpage. Our webpage includes all the posters on the table and explanations. Now, if you notice, I have a couple of menus on the screen towards the bottom of the thing there. The ones in kind of a green-blue table of contents. Those are shortcuts. It'll automatically jump to that section of our webpage, be it the incentives or the rebates, or how to get an energy audit, or things to consider when you're planning your next step. Even elective pay for nonprofits, which we'll cover if we have time. If we don't, you may have to look at the web. We'll see. And at the right, there's another menu, which I've labeled State Fair Shortcuts. That's a shortcut to the area median income table, the clean energy resource teams. The Department of Commerce works with CERTs. They share information. So CERTs often has good summaries of the latest details. So that's a good place for people to look as well. In fact, both CERTs and Commerce will probably be just several yards away from our table. And last year they had electric appliances over the place. So check it out. Get a little bit early to see what's there, and you can refer people if they have questions on heat pumps or whatever. I think we'll have a heat pump outside as well, and we'll talk about it. There'll be a heat pump water heater close to your table too. Also, the Department of Commerce website links there, and that's where you access the Rewiring America link. So we got that. And another plug for our business card. It just has the link to our webpage. We printed several thousand of those. There's card holders on the table. Make sure those card holders don't run out. I believe the spare cards are under the table. If you can't find them, ask the floor supervisor. So we got that going. A couple tips. Often we'll find someone says they've already done everything or they can't afford anything. If you hear that, encourage them to share the information with their family, friends, and neighbors. that normally brightens them up and they say, I'll do it, I'll take a card. So you got that going. And even if you're not standing next to your IRA table, maybe you're standing next to the heat pump, maybe you're outside standing next to the solar panels. Well, let them know about the rebates for those items, so be aware of that. Directly above the computer, I have a small sign that encourages visitors to use the computer, and it refers to the Rewiring America website and also contains a QR code. On the off chance that we run out of business cards, they can snap a picture of that QR code and it'll take them directly to our page as well. So we got that going on. Okay, so another break. Any questions on what we've covered so far? Patty, Patty's your hand still up, or do you?
Yes, I just put it back up.
Okay,
So I
Patty,
have
you're
three quick questions. So I know that I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'm sure people are going to say, so I just did all this because they said they were going to have the rebates. Is it retroactive? No, right?
No, it is not. No, it's always possible they could change the rule, but it's highly unlikely. Especially if it's going to be one thing where you have to pre-qualify to even get the discount. So we'll see how they do it. I have the same situation. I upgraded my electric panel already. I've done a whole bunch of stuff. So the only thing I've been able to claim so far has been insulation. Okay, you had another question?
My next question is actually about insulation. So I thought I read somewhere that it has to go up to, you have to put insulation up to a R40 to get the rebate, or is that incorrect?
Well, I'm sure you want to put it up to the state limit. And I actually did mine to the most that would fit. I said, the heck with it. Every year they increase it slightly. So I think I have mine like R70 or something like that. It doesn't really cost that much more just to add a couple bags of insulation.
No, but if you're retrofitting an old home, sometimes you can't do a R40 because you physically don't have the space. So do you not get anything if it's not up to that level?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
As far as I don't think I haven't read anything saying that there is a limit, but I can't say for certainty, but I bet a contractor would know. And you could probably do the foam spraying, that's very, very small and it's very highly insulated.
Although some people don't like that.
Okay, a third question, Patty.
Is, do you have to have a contractor or something, or can you get these rebates if you do it yourself?
It varies. The ones that don't compensate you for labor are things that you could certainly do yourself. I think you'd even do the other ones if you're qualified, if you could put an electric stove and so forth. A lot of those ones just sit on top of your gas one. But the main thing is that you cannot claim labor on the ones that I mentioned before, windows, doors, insulation. So, okay, Amy, you're up.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So it's similar to the last question, Patty. Just to get it very, very clear in my head. The poster that we have that says IRA tax credit for households, anybody can get any of those things right now and then claim them on their taxes this coming April or whatever. However, if someone wants to buy, say, an induction stove, we might want to say absolutely, but maybe not yet because you can't get a rebate on that yet because Minnesota's not quite rolled it out. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. But there are a few other things to consider. Of course, if your stove's broken, you might want to do it right away.
Yeah.
Also, even with the tax credits, although they're available now and all the way through 2032, although there's a chance that the new Congress could change something, but it's going to be difficult because they have to win all three sections, both parts of Congress and the presidency. But you still have to have enough tax liability in order to offset that. So you have to kind of plan these things out.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Kim.
Yes, so the piece of information that people may want to know that isn't available here is how much do these things cost? It's nice to know that I'll get this much for a rebate and this percentage back. But I was thinking about this when you mentioned that that $10,000 heat pump might not be big enough for your house. So,
right. And so this is part of the planning. So you should contact these contractors and get some quotes before these things even come out so that you're ready to apply the second you have a chance and know what you're doing. So I asked mine a year ago. So. But I thought that the rebates would be out by the end of the year, but they weren't, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mary,
Okay, two things. One, the person who asked if they could do it themselves, I've got a cheat sheet. And if you are gonna do insulation yourself or attic insulation yourself, you should look into that beforehand, because to get the utility rebate, you have to use their rebate eligible installers. So I just wanted to call that one out as one I knew. So I would check with the utilities first, look at the rules there, and then go down the line. But that kind of thing, especially the attic, and if you live in Minneapolis, you could probably get for everything paid for. Then the second question, I actually have a question, because I was doing some stuff while you were talking, Tim. When we're using these examples of like how much of a rebate that Minnesota is going to give, I thought that what you shared said that this wasn't finalized yet. Is that right? Did I see that correctly?
First of all, thanks for the information on the first part. And yeah, that's correct. The rebates are not yet final. I
Okay.
received a message from them just 2 days ago where they said that they're still discussing it. I think Brian might want to comment on that, but Brian, you want to say something on that?
Yeah, I'm on the advisory committee, and we just had our third meeting. There's a fourth meeting. Activities are gonna go until sort of early fall as far as receiving input. Then they're gonna kind of close things off and develop the program. And, there's a timeline on the Commerce Department website, but it says 2025, early 2025, I think is what they're saying, but that's probably not optimistic, or, that's probably the soonest.
So,
Yeah.
so your short answer is probably 2025, but you don't know when?
Right, there is no
Okay.
timeline established beyond.
Yeah,
that.
their chart lists a goal of spring 2025. But
Okay.
after they decide what they want, they then have to make a proposal to the federal government. The federal government has to approve it. Then they have to decide the computer program that's going to implement it. So
Okay.
I think spring's optimistic, but that's their goal.
Okay, good to know.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bill, you're up.
Yeah, this question is about electric panel upgrades. I'm wondering what qualifies. I have a 200 amp service, but the panel I have is small and all the slots are full, and the panel is out of production. So any new modifications require buying old equipment. So
I can tell you right away, Bill, I don't know the answer to that. My guess is that you might qualify, but you're going to have to go through an electrician and get their advice. So I think these companies will know, or worst comes to worst, you have to call the IRS, or maybe
thanks.
The Department of Commerce.
I think
certs.
adding a sub panel would count as an upgrade, Bill.
Okay, no,
Example.
you did it for like electric car, Brian?
Well, I'm in exactly the same situation as Bill. I have a 200 amp panel that's full. But I think if I'm going to add more solar or put some radiant heating in, probably adding a sub panel would be the way I would do that.
Okay, yeah, with all these things, if you get asked these questions and you don't know the answer and you can't find them in the documentation, say that you don't know yet, or that suggest that they talk to the people at CERTS that are just across the table with their Department of Commerce that are just down the aisle, see what they know. So just tell them we'll know more later. So, boy, a lot of questions. I don't know if we're gonna get. I guess we'll continue with questions. Bill, are you done? Okay, Arnie,
I am.
you're
Thank
up.
you.
No, thank you, Arnie. Your hand's up.
Well, I guess, if it feels like a bit of a dilemma for me, because, I want to get people fired up about, all these possibilities, but then you have the problem that Minnesota hasn't, they don't have their rebates in place yet. And so it's kind of hard to tell somebody, well, you should jump in right now, when in fact, they're probably better off if they wait till summer, whenever of 2025.
Of course, there's a couple other ways of looking at this too. What if the administration changes and they somehow manage to kill those? Maybe they shouldn't wait.
There
So
is
there's
that.
too. However, I heard from at a Department of Commerce webinar that they intend to get the rebate funds before the current administration ends, which means that they'll have the funds. But again, if they don't get approved, it may not happen. So yeah, there's no guarantees. Yeah, okay. Mary, you're up one more time. I think that'll be the last question. Then we're going to move on.
Okay, very quickly, I did want to say, and this sort of talks to what Arnie just said as well. I would recommend that we recommend to people that they start with a home energy audit, because that will help them identify costs. A lot of these things, they have to have a home energy audit within the last 3 years. So if they don't know what to do, tell them to start there, and then they can move on from there. And that is something where they can, if they're in the right district, they can get it for free. You know, like if they're in Minneapolis, they can get it for free if they're under 150 AMI.
Yeah,
So
I
that's it.
completely agree with that. And in fact, when you go to our webpage, feel free to click on the home energy audit thing, because it has details how to do that. It's normally the best first step. I was reading that for Minnesota is considering for the heat pump systems that you may have to get an energy audit that meets certain criteria, and within like a year of the time you get your heat pump. So there's still more things that can be coming out. It may be more complex than the CEE audit. We'll see. Okay, so right now we're at 7:28. I'll give you a couple choices. You can see on the screen, I'll roll it up here. We're currently at slide 30. I have about 6 more slides. It's probably going to take me 10 more minutes. Want me to go through them or quit? Go through them? Okay. If you have to go, I'll understand, but so let's just start. Here we go. Next to our table, there's going to be a heat pump water heater. It was set up by Nate, I think it's pronounced Naby, of waterheatersnow.com. They're based in Burnsville, and they also have a Rochester office. We taped a bunch of signs to it, mainly Chris did, to help answer visitor questions. Things to note, it's a Rheem heat pump water heater. It's a 65-gallon unit. All this information is on it. The heat is extracted from the room air, and it passes through the top of the unit. You can see the vents there. There's an air filter at the top of the unit that you have to keep clean, and it includes an electrical resistance heat as a backup. I have this information and a bit more about it is at the end of that quick start guide that you just got a link to. So you got those. And I hear there's also going to be an electric bike on display. I don't know if anyone knows, but I think it's going to be outside, but I'm not sure. It was inside when I was there, but it's probably just to keep it safe. If you haven't staffed the fair before, it could note that it could be a lot of fun talking to visitors, see what they've done, what they know about, what they're interested in. And as I mentioned before, no matter where you're standing, get a sense of what they've done and what they'd like to do, and let them know about the incentives that they could take advantage of. Refer to the posters. Ask what they plan to tackle first. Get them thinking about making a plan. And let them know that they don't have to do everything at once, especially for the tax credits. It's a 10-year window. The rebates, of course, it's really going to be, I'm guessing like maybe 1 in 100 might get them if they're lucky, maybe 1 in 10,000, unless there's more money. So encourage them to make a plan. I have a bunch of tips here, but I'm going to skip them to move on. Electric vehicles. I want to thank Jason and Brian for putting this information together. I'm not an electric vehicle owner, but I have a Prius hybrid. Many dealers give you the option of transferring the EV tax credit to them at the time of sale. So in exchange, you get an instant rebate, which reduces the price by the same amount. To qualify for the rebate on a new EV, your income must be under that listed in the green section there. So you can see for a new car, there's one limit and a used car, another limit. The credit is $3,750 if the vehicle meets certain critical mineral requirements, and another $3,750 for a total of $7,500 if it meets battery component requirement. Note that the MSRP cannot exceed $55K for a car or $80K for a truck or SUV. Last, any EV that qualifies must undergo final assembly in North America. And you file Form 8936 with your federal tax reform. But again, this poster's out there, you can refer to it. The section in gray, the third one down, that refers to rules for a used EV. It's capped at 30% of the sale price up to a credit of $4,000, but the used EV must be purchased from a dealer. You can't go to your neighbor and get it unless they sell it to a dealer first. And again, there were Minnesota EV incentives, but the funds have already been exhausted. The section in a shade of orange covers EV leasing. With leases, it's the dealer that gets the credit, but that allows them to reduce what they charge you. The second page lists the vehicles which currently qualify for the tax credit. And if you want to know the actual prices, there's a website called shifttoelectric.com that lists the prices and features of the various models. And on our website, under the EV section, there's a link to that Shift to Electric. So we got that going on. Okay, and I'm going to wrap up here with elective pay, then we'll just have open chat after that. Last year, I got several questions on what can a nonprofit do? What can my church do? Okay, this is a screen. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. This is a screenshot from our webpage. Tax-exempt entities that don't owe federal tax can qualify to receive a payment equal to the full value of the tax credits for certain clean energy projects. Now, these entities include local government, tribal government, houses of worship, schools, hospitals, homeowner associations, co-ops, public utilities, and community organizations. Eligible projects include rooftop solar, battery storage, geothermal heat pumps, as well as qualifying electric vehicles and charging stations. If your project meets the requirements, and your organization could receive a payment covering 30 to 40% of the project costs, and sometimes up to 70% of the costs. Just a couple more slides. The base credit for a project under 1 megawatt is 30%. If the project meets the criteria shown in green, it's guaranteed to increase your credit by the indicated amount. Those criteria include paying prevailing wage, meeting apprenticeship guidelines, materials produced domestically. There's also a bonus if the project's located in an energy community. So like a brownfield site, somewhere where they have lost jobs during the fossil fuel plants being closed, like the coal plants in Becker, that sort of thing. Most projects will only qualify for a credit in the 30 to 50% range. And large projects, which do not pay prevailing wage, could receive as little as 6% to 10% elective pay, formerly called direct pay. The section in blue refers to additional funding that has been reserved for low-income communities. These are competitive and they have annual funding limits. Here's, we're at the end here. This is an overview of the process to claim need water, to claim elective pay. If you pursue one of the projects that was listed in yellow on the tax credit sheet, like solar, so you do that first. If you haven't filed taxes before, you check with the IRS as to what your tax year is. Complete the project and place it in service. Then 4 months before filing your taxes, you need to create a clean energy business account. Follow that link there. And on completing the process, the IRS will provide you with a registration number that you have to include in your tax return. File your tax return, get your money. So it's a lot of people didn't know what this process was, but the last few months has become pretty clear. So we got that going. Got that. And we've made it to the end. So I'm going to stop sharing and see who's left here. We still got some people left. Good, good. So open discussion. If you need to go now, it's 7:36. You're welcome to run off. I think we might post this online if you think it's worthwhile. And so anything you want to talk about, questions or things you want to, that you know of, you want to share with us, go ahead.
Tim, I was just going to note that there is an EV display in the Eco Experience building. And that'll just be kind of right across the room from us. So just like with the certs and the Department of Commerce, you can point people over there if they're want to have more detailed discussions about EVs.
Yeah, and last year there was also an e-bike section. And
Yep.
Brian, you're volunteering in the EV at some point, right?
Yep, I'm doing a shift there.
Okay, excellent. Bill's first, okay?
Yeah, so when I bought my Nissan Leaf in 2012 and got a $7,500 federal tax credit, I had to pay Minnesota State sales tax or vehicle tax, 6.5%, amounting to almost $500. Do you know if you have the option and use the option where the dealer gets the credit and they just lower the price? Will the state still charge that additional windfall sales tax?
I'm going to defer to Brian or Jason. They may not know. I don't know.
So as it happens, we just bought a used vehicle today and they did the point of sale rebate for us, even though we may not qualify, but they did it provisionally. And it did lower the sales price and therefore lower the sales tax that we owe. Is that what you were talking about?
No.
That's right. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Do note, if you go solar, Minnesota has waived the sales tax on solar, so that's a good thing. Kim.
So I love the idea of advising people to start with a home energy audit.
Yep.
Is it better for them to go through their electric provider, or where should we advise them to start when they're looking for a home energy audit?
Okay, our website points them to the Center for Energy and the Environment. It covers Excel customers and I think Excel is both Minneapolis and St. Paul, right? But for the gas part, it's Minigasco in Minneapolis, but CEE. So you just go to the rebate section of our website and it has all the links there. So with the other ones, if you don't know, you could certainly call CERTS. They might be able to help you, but maybe start with your utility. They might be able to advise you where to go. Okay. Patty, you're up.
So all this about buying new EVs and all that kind of stuff, and then there's people that will say, well, if I'm buying used cars that still run, I don't have to have a new car made. How does that measure out in efficiency and saving energy and all that? Do you know what I mean? What I'm asking?
Yeah,
ahead,
every built object has embodied carbon, and reusing, it's reuse, reduce, recycle, right? So not buying a car at all and keeping your gas car is, has an energy advantage versus buying an EV, especially if you don't drive many miles. So you definitely need to talk about that. My wife and I tried to get along with just one car for the last year. It was kind of an experiment for us, the first time in 30 plus years. And we succumbed. I mean, it wasn't working for us, but definitely we tried, because we know that, not creating another object with a lot of embodied carbon is better than creating one. So, I mean, substituting an e-bike for a car is definitely a huge savings in embodied carbon. Being able to do without a car is a saving. So buying used versus new, yeah, definitely. So all of those are things on a spectrum. There's no black and white. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, you have to consider what works for you. If you need another car and you can't afford a new one, well, then a used EV may make a lot of sense. But you just have to, how much do you drive and so forth? Are there charges where you're going to be driving? So, okay, Jessica.
Hi. Yeah, I was just gonna follow up to the question that was asked, because the ICE vehicles, so internal combustion engine vehicles, are so inefficient in terms of converting gas to actual power or energy. It actually makes more sense in the long run to buy, instead of if it's not a financial decision to buy a new EV, than to buy an old ICE vehicle. I don't know if that helps answer the question, but obviously financial decisions are
I'm gonna
are
put,
wildly important.
after years of looking into this, I'm gonna put the single best resource I have found on this topic in the chat. It's called Carbon Counter. It uses what's called the GREET model, which is done by Argonne National Labs. And there's a lot of detail there. You can read their methodology, but it's sometimes called well-to-wheels analysis of vehicles. It uses cost as the other axis, which is interesting, but it's got, well, check it out if you're interested in the full, you know, I guess environmental impact of driving a vehicle. You can take a look at that. And then you can look at the GREET model if you really want to know what all's going in. But to your point, Jessica, yeah, definitely. It came up in a talk I did on Saturday. You know, a person was rightly concerned about the minerals, especially cobalt, that are coming from the Congo, and you know, children working in artisanal mines. You know, a lot of that cobalt goes into cell phones, and some of it goes into refining gasoline. So it's very complicated, is the right answer. But the way I look at it is, it's what are you replacing? You know, it's all on a spectrum. We're trying to move down the spectrum of, you know, basically consuming and generating less carbon. And there's nothing is perfect. As long as you're in the physical world, you know, everything has some kind of a carbon or greenhouse gas effect. So if you really want to know, you have to, you know, go in and get the data and do the math. But Jessica makes a great point about just the fundamental efficiency of electric vehicles. And that's what that carbon counter thing kind of captures and on one dimension.
Can I add two more things to what Brian just said? One is as our as our power sources become more, like, as our infrastructure, our utility becomes more and more decarbonized, the benefits for electric vehicles in terms of decarbonization gets greater and greater. The second thing that I did want to add is, and this is absolutely not an excuse, because we need to, like, environmental justice and labor rights are absolutely crucial, but the only times I ever hear anybody complaining about these horrific labor issues is when it has to do with the clean energy transition, but they're totally fine continuing to use oil and gas or their cell phones with the same issues. It's an oil and gas disinformation campaign.
Yeah, so true.
Lots of disadvantaged communities living, you know, downwind from refineries, and children are, you know, getting asthma by the millions, just based on our fossil fuel lifestyle. So that's what we're comparing it with.
Yeah, there's so much emphasis on how much this is all going to cost, but compared to everything else we're doing and the benefits, I mean, just, you know, vastly fewer deaths, you know, better quality of life, better comfort, not to mention keeping the oceans from getting higher in the future. So all kinds
There's a graph that, this is my last comment because I know we're way over, but there's a graph that shows that the oil and gas subsidies are enough to pay for the entire electric transition.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Okay. Well, at this point, you know, everyone's welcome to stay or go. I'll just keep the chat going while people are still here, but I think we pretty much run our course. But anything you want to talk about, be it this or something else, a reminder that we're not meeting in September other than a couple days at the fair, 1st and 2nd, and Robert may be scheduling another EJ meeting, I don't know. If you want to attend the postcarding, let me know, and so forth. So
thanks a lot for your leadership, Tim. The newsletter is awesome every couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, thank you. I look forward to having supper in a moment.
No, that was a great presentation at the training the other day at the church at Mayflower. That caught a lot of folks' attention, and I think that they're going to probably come into our booth to get some additional information.
Yeah, well, be as it may, I do know that people at the state fair from MRES have told us that the IRA exhibit was the main attraction that got the most attention there. So you'll be popular.
Yeah. Anyway, Anyway, guys, I'm gonna check out, but have a good night. That was very good. Very
Yeah,
good.
take care, everybody.
Okay, well, thanks for coming.
Fair.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you,
leadership.
Tim.